Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next edition of the 49er Industry Chat. I am going to pause as we welcome everyone into the chat today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement here at California State University, Long Beach. Thank you for joining us today. And now it's my pleasure to remind you that this session is being recorded, and if you could view it on our website at csubalumni.edu/alumni. And also, we encourage you to submit any questions for our guest speaker today using our Q&A box located above or below your screen. And now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. His title for his presentation today is Building a Career in Business Aviation, Public-Private Partnerships. Curt Castagna has a diverse background in general aviation and more than 40 years of proven expertise in all aspects of airport development, aviation consulting, and management services. He is the president and CEO of Aerolease and Aeroplex businesses and entities, which includes general aviation and business aircraft centers located at the Long Beach, Van Nuys, and Dallas Love airports. Curt's firm also oversees the majority of the management of the city of Santa Monica's aviation, real estate, leasing, and self-serve fueling operations. Curt is the immediate past board chair of the board of directors for the National Air Transportation Association, is the current chairman of the Los Angeles County Aviation Commission, and he is a certified member of the American Association of Airport Executives. Devoted to mentoring future aviation professionals, he has over 30 years of experience teaching as an adjunct professor. Please join me in welcoming today's 49er Industry Chat host, Curt Castagna. Curt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yana, thank you so much for the invitation to be here with you all. And I'm so pleased for the opportunity to come back to Long Beach State and work with your group. And many thanks to your team, because I know putting an event like this on is not a single person event. So thank you all. And I really look forward to this session. And I'm excited about it.
Wonderful. So thank you for making time today to chat with our alumni and our students for the next 45 minutes. We are very proud to have you as part of our alumni family and hear your story and trajectory to this wonderful career you have. So I usually like to start at the beginning. I know I didn't read it here, but I know that you transferred from a community college to Long Beach State and wanted, to start off with what your experience was like and what was your experience at Long Beach State?
Well, thank you. So born and raised in Seal Beach and still live in Rossmore nearby. And so I've spent my life here. When I was growing up, I attended Huntington Beach High School and graduated there and had already had been working at the airport while I was in high school. I actually learned to fly when I was 15 and got my license before I got my driver's license. And so I had accomplished some of those things with my interest in aviation before I attended college. And truth be told, when I attended college, I didn't really know what I wanted to study. I knew I had an interest in aviation, so I attended Cypress Community College in their aviation program and took my general aviation requirements. And I knew that obtaining a 4-year degree was important to me. But again, I didn't have my focus on what that degree field was and what trajectory I was going on a career path. In hindsight now, it was ideal. But I didn't know that at the time. And I guess one of my messages that I would leave today to the group and that I often tell my students is, as they're sitting in their chairs in the classroom today, they probably don't know themselves. And so much of my message today is aligned towards the encouragement and the things that I've learned over the last many years to hopefully give back to them as I look backwards on my career. But my experience at Cypress Community College was was fantastic. It was a little insecure, again, from the standpoint I didn't know why I was there. I knew I was attending the classes. I had really enjoyed the aviation classes. It was fascinating to me. When I transferred to Long Beach State, I settled on a degree in political science and with an emphasis on public administration. And in hindsight, why I say was ideal is airports today, and much of the work that we do at airports involves 90% of my time is engagement with the public sector. And airports are run by municipal governments, most of them, some states by the state. And then there's obviously federal oversight. And so understanding government and understanding how government works has been very helpful to me because, again, much of what our business focus has been really depends on a positive relationship with the public sector. And so you'll hear me talk about public-private partnerships and how in order to achieve success in private business, it really depends on a public sector relationship. And I think the true is in reverse. In order to have a healthy public airport operation, one needs to have a really healthy understanding of the private sector businesses that work at those airports. And so my time at Long Beach State was it was very efficient to me. At the time, they referred to it as a commuter school. Mm-hmm. And so I worked full time when I was going to school. I carried 16 to 18 units, and I was working 40 hours a week at the airport already in private business aviation. And the capacity of really fueling, working on the ramp. We've also fueled the commercial airlines. And I was rising in, I'll call it supervisory and management ranks at the same time I was attending college. So I had really very little time. My classes were all, for the most part, all night classes that I attended in person. And so I like to tell this story that my wife and I met at Long Beach State. She was a pre-law major. So we were both in the political science department. She was working and managing a law office at the same time. So she was working full time and attending school. And so we graduated in June of '87. We walked and we got married, I believe, 2 weeks later. And so we've been married for 37 years, almost 36 years. So all started at Long Beach State.
It did. You're one of the many thousands of couples that meet at the beach.
Yeah, at the beach. So.
Wonderful. So now, and I know we're going to leave a lot of the questions for the end, but as you were working and rising in the supervisor roles, are there any skills you think our students should be making sure that they cultivate and enhance as a student now?
Absolutely. So when I was working at the airport, I learned to fly. I had some advanced flying certificates, and I decided early on instinctively that I did not want to fly for a career. And to be honest, I thought flying for the airlines was like driving a bus, and flying a private aircraft was like driving a limousine because, they're not on a schedule. And it didn't appeal to me, but I love to fly. I still fly today. I own an airplane. My wife and I own an airplane, and we fly, and I use it for work and for fun. But I was really intrigued with the management of airports and the management of business at airports. And so as I look back again, and let me say this before I answer the question about the skill sets, is that most people identify with 4 real major aviation careers. Everyone knows there's a pilot, they know flight attendants, maybe a mechanic, and then air traffic controller. And I would say those are the 4 major positions that everyone can identify in. But I've learned over the years, there are thousands of jobs in this aviation community. There's engineering, architect, hands-on trade positions at airports. Many people don't realize just alone at the Los Angeles International Airport, there's 4,000 employees in various job roles. And there are so many on-ramps into the industry from an academic environment that Long Beach State provides today. If I would have looked back then, maybe I would have chosen a different degree than political science or considered it, but civil engineering or business, communications, these are all opportunities that a school like Long Beach provides people if they're interested at the same time in the aviation sector. But as being an adjunct instructor, and some of the things that I see in the classroom myself, and then in the workforce, some of the skill sets, to your point, would be certainly writing skills, and communication skills, and being able to speak confidently on a topic, and do so, without reading your screen of a PowerPoint, and being able to talk and educate yourself on a topic and present it much like you would do in a professional environment. And so I try to integrate a lot of that into my own classroom syllabuses to expose the students to writing requirements, because that's where I also see the deficiencies in a lot of the students coming out of school. And truth be told, I was not an A student. I was a CB student, and I'd like to say I was like Avis. We were number 2, but we tried harder. And I learned how to write over the years, and I've become more proficient in my writing through experience. And so I think for students today, if they can write professionally and articulately, it will advance their career much faster.
Yes. I had a professor once say, just continue reading, because that's what's going to help you become a better writer. Just read it could be anything, but read every day.
So you see on the slide that I prepared some of the talking points. These are some of the messages that I discuss with students that I still mentor with today. I spoke about aviation career opportunities. If you were to study the airport management world today, there's 19,000 airports in the United States. 5,200 of those are run by public sector municipal governments. If you compare the United States to other countries, and I'll say the emerging countries, let's say Brazil, India, and China. In India, there's roughly about 78 airports. In China, less than 200. And in Brazil, less than that. And here, their populations are significantly larger in many respects than ours, and we have 19,000 airports. So the U.S. national airspace system and the Federal Aviation Administration and the infrastructure for the airports is the model for the world without question. And so career opportunities in this field are phenomenal, and post-COVID even more so. In the 60s and the 70s, many of the commercial airports that you see, the Dallas, the Los Angeles, Chicago's, they were typically run by retired military pilots that came out of the military and were running the airports. If you look at those same airports today, Los Angeles, Denver, Atlanta, the busiest airport in the world, they're run by architects, civil engineers, or finance majors. They're business people running those airports, because airports are small little businesses. And without getting into the politics of it, they are totally independent of the municipal government. And so I'll use Long Beach Airport as an example. The airport's budget is independent of the general fund. The monies made at the airport stay at the airport, and the expenditures stay there, and they do not rely on general fund tax money. And so understanding government and understanding finance is a fantastic way to get into the aviation management career field. So my vision for a future was really, I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I liked management. I knew I liked airports. And my personal attitude was, if I didn't know the person's job ahead of me, I was going to figure it out. And when that person was on vacation, I volunteered my time to fill in and do things to make myself available just to learn. And that attitude, I think, is what has attributed to any of the success I've had. Is my work ethic and attitude was not to wait to be told, but to just initiate. And I'm a very strong believer in an education for my own kids who've gone to school and graduated. I'm a big believer in it. They both went to liberal arts schools and have fantastic degrees, I think it provides a foundation for your career. It isn't necessarily the end all. And so I look back on my Long Beach State and Cypress experience, and I think in hindsight, the older I get, the more I appreciate the foundation that it provided me because of the worldly things that I learned academically, that then I could go experiment and work full time. And the truth be told is that the working full time is what led me to the opportunities that I really had. It wasn't really my education so much, but it was the relationships and the networking that I developed at the same time I was going to school.
Yeah, and that's really key, and that's something that you don't learn in a classroom. Build relationships and network because you don't know who you might meet in your path.
Correct. And I often tell, so at Cal State Los Angeles, they have an aviation management program. It's a Bachelor of Science degree. And at the time when I was going to school, that program didn't exist. I actually at Long Beach created a special major, which they permitted at the time. And I created an emphasis in airport management through that special major program that allowed me to bring the airports into the public policy side of the political science degree. And I tell my students is that if you're going to school and you're going to wait till you'll get out of school with your 4-year degree to go enter the workplace, you're going to be competing with the people that have gone out ahead of you and have taken opportunities to internship or volunteer. And I would really encourage people that are listening, and I encourage my students to provide or take opportunities for an internship, even if it's volunteer, even if it's for a short period of time, to put that on your resume to expand your skill sets. Because when you graduate, it's not so much that it's on your resume experience, it's the relationships that you got through that internship that's going to provide for your more permanent position. And I think that's probably more relevant today post-COVID, where in the remote workforce world, where people are looking for talented individuals to join their team, but they want to experience them. They want to get to know them before they bring them on the team. And I know that's true of my own staff. We recently went through a hiring process, and I somewhat excused myself from it. And I let the staff be more engaging in the process because they're the ones that are going to have to manage the team environment. And so I'm a big believer in that type of culture in our own workplace. So relationships and networking have been really key to my success and what I would refer to as building my own brand. You mentioned my role with the National Air Transportation Association. So I've been on that board for 8 years. I chaired it I was supposed to chair for 1 year, but because of COVID, they asked me to stay as chair for 2. But I get to network with the highest profile leaders in our business community that I'm involved in. And so the relationships that I've built with that are at very high levels that have become resources for me that have actually turned into projects for our company.
Right. And yeah, that was one of my questions, like how important is to be part of service associations, like the many that you belong to, and whether sometimes they have, younger or student memberships that they could also explore to get their foot in the door.
Absolutely. One of the organizations I'm involved with, referred to as AAAE, or the American Association of Airport Executives, they actually have a student membership. I think it's $40, but it provides young professionals the opportunity to network and attend conferences and to build relationships through these organizations. And so another takeaway is I would encourage people, look for a mentor. And so find a mentor that will be your mentor in a career path that can help guide you. But at the same time, it's I think young people and college students' responsibility to become a mentor. And so I find myself serving in both roles as I try to mentor individuals, but at the same time, many of the people that are ahead of me that have opened doors for me have been my mentors. And so it's a pay it forward relationship that you really need to maintain. Because again, you can't rely on just your education. That's just one component of your success.
And you have over 40 years of experience in the aviation industry. You have on here work ethic versus education. Could you share a little bit about your values, in the work ethic, and also maybe what you're looking for in new candidates as they onboard into your company.
So as I mentioned, I wasn't the best academic student. I think it was my willingness and my attitude that helped me succeed. And I wasn't willing to accept failure. So I failed. When I failed, I just found an end around or new ways to, achieve what my goal was. And so that became somewhat of the foundation for my own culture in our company. Is I really look for attitude when I hire. I like to hire for attitude over maybe skill sets, because some of the skill sets I can train with, but I can't train attitude or work ethic. And education, I guess my reference there kind of ties to that next bullet point for advanced degrees. But I have students often ask me, well, what should now that I finished my bachelor's degree, I'd like to go on and get a master's. What should I get a master's in? And usually my recommendation is don't wait a couple of years, go find, get some work experience, find a career path that maybe you find some interest in, gain some worldly knowledge and work knowledge, then go back and possibly find, because what you might find is that the master's or advanced degree that you're going to seek is different than what you thought it would be. And then again, in our own culture, work company culture, is I look for certificates and I encourage students for certificates over advanced degrees. So I've had employees that have gotten real estate licenses or AutoCAD. In fact, at Long Beach State, a certificate through the Extension College through project management. And so certificate programs in many ways, I think, are more valuable in certain careers than an advanced degree is. And so I think, and those are somewhat easier to obtain from the standpoint of time frame and commitment, and they're shorter spans of commitment. But at the same time, they help enhance your resume. And so those are some of the things that we look for in our own hiring process.
Wonderful. Does your company subsidize any of them, or would you encourage students to find, positions where continuing education is part of the culture?
It's a great question. And to answer it, yes, is the simple answer. We do. So I look at compensation, and this came through our founder of our company who mentored me, is I look at base compensation, and then I look for ways to create opportunities for the employees beyond their base compensation. It could be profit sharing. And so in some of our business lines, we have revenue sectors where the employees have actually created little internal business models within our company. And then I share revenue from that, but I make them own it from the standpoint of from conception to completion, meaning when you collect the money for the project, you have to own it all the way through, but they get a share of the revenue from that on top of their base compensation. So I feel like we have a very strong loyalty, because then the employees feel like they have ownership in it. And as far as the academic, we subsidize a certain amount of money where we'll contribute to their academic achievements, and we'll either pay for it or reimburse them for it but I like to do the reimbursement piece, because I want the staff person to have skin in the game to go out and achieve it and finish it before he gets, it's not a gift, you got to earn it.
Yeah.
But I think more and more companies are doing that. Prior to COVID, I really was, we all of us, I think, realized that to live in Southern California, it's very expensive. I struggled with our compensation schedules. My wife was very instrumental in encouraging me to look at those programs to improve it for the employees, which has really resulted in a much higher morale. But I could say over COVID, our salary compensation over the last couple of years has gone up 30%. And much of that is because I realized that the company was doing well and we had the opportunity to do it. And two, it was the right thing to do to match the level of what living expenses need. And so it's always a balance. But it's something that as an employer, you're constantly doing. And if you have good people, you want to take care of them, because they're going to turn around and take care of you.
Yeah, definitely. with as the leader of your organization, you work with many things, whether it's human resources, you oversee real estate, leasing. How do you stay abreast of all the policies related to those various fields?
It's a great question. It would be through the work that I'm doing through the the various, I'll call it volunteer, the work I do through the NATA certainly gives me connectivity. Our organization is based out of Washington, D.C. And so I'm very much tied to the issues that are important to our industry on a national level. And so I'm very aware of either the current changes in regulation and policies or the pending changes. Was very involved in funding and resources through the CARES Act for our businesses, not just our own businesses, but as a representative to the organization, the members in our 3,000 members, helping them achieve success as well. And then, through my role with LA County and in local chambers of commerce and other, community groups, those types of things keeps your, finger on the pulse of what's happening locally versus regionally versus nationally. And as we know, it's changing daily. And so, as I mentioned early on, 90% of my time in steering the business is really related to public policy related matters. And so, again, I look back on my academic career and it gave me a very good solid foundation. It was serendipity from the standpoint I didn't plan it that way necessarily, but it came full circle to be very beneficial.
Wonderful. Congratulations on that. How do you navigate, the public-private partnerships? Because they obviously have different policies to follow.
So I'll tell you the reason why we have that as part of our mission statement is public-private partnerships. Is so airports again are public entities, and the businesses at the airport are private industry, and so there's a natural how those two interact with each other are very important for the success of both independently. And so having been in the private sector for 40 years and managing private business and knowing how much time I was spending in the public side and the relationships that I was building on the public side, one of our core businesses now, as you'll see, is airport consulting. And so what I did is I took 40 years of experience and brought in either older, retired public sector airport folks to come join our team as independent consultants to help us go to the public sector and educate them on how the private sector businesses in our field work, so that they could make decisions at their airport, not in a vacuum, but with real understanding of what we were doing. At the same time, I've taken all of that public sector knowledge on policies, on airport policies, and have used it to go educate my colleagues and other businesses, and many of them competitors to a degree, in working and understanding the world in which airport managers have to live with their policy world. And when you can understand those rules and those foundations, then you can find ways to navigate to achieve a mutual success for both of them. And so that public-private partnership, I think, is ever so more important today than it was 5 years ago, because for healthy communities, airports, to be successful, they really have to have an understanding of their business world. If you follow the history of Long Beach Airport at all, it's surrounded by some of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city of Long Beach. And so here you have an airport right in the middle of your community. And folks will often hear me say that airports are often like prisons and nuclear waste dumps. No one wants one in their neighborhood. So how airports live within a community is really a factor of a public-private partnership, because how do you maximize the economic potential for that airport, for that community, in job creation and high-paying jobs, and bringing in corporate monies to that community that increases the tax base? How do you do that while best mitigating the quality of life concerns and noise and environmental issues that the neighborhoods would have? And that is the goal of every airport. around the country. It's not unique to Long Beach. Just Long Beach is a great model because it's had a tremendous history in noise regulations and mitigations, but it's probably one of the most diverse, well-balanced airports that I know of.
Yes, and like Long Beach has these cute little restaurants that are not chain restaurants. You know, that's something I like about Long Beach Airport.
Yeah, they have, so it has a community flair.
Yeah.
And so you just touched upon, you know, when we go do airport development and we do it all around the country now, we're looking at the airport and we're understanding what's the culture in that community. If I'm working in Texas or Bozeman, Montana, what's the culture there and how do I integrate that culture into the architecture of the buildings and the feel and the services that we're providing so that there's a natural link between the community and the airport.
Wonderful. That's what makes it, you know, a home, that community flair. So I do have a couple questions that have come up from the audience. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
That's a great question. So I'm young enough to keep working and I love what I do. And so, you know, my wife will shoot me for saying this, but maybe I'm still working. But I think the work that I would like to be doing at that point is probably, I'll call it more soft work and consulting and being more of a mentor if I'm involved with our staff, or an emeritus type role than it is in the day-to-day. I tend to get into the weeds of things, which I think is both good and bad. But in 10 years, I'd like to see myself still giving back because a lot of the stuff I've done, the volunteer work I've done, especially the teaching part, I like to share that 5 of the Los Angeles Basin airports, and I'll name them, Van Nuys, Fullerton, Orange County recently just left, but San Bernardino, Santa Monica, those 5 airport managers were former students of mine. And so I like to say that, you know, our business has built millions of dollars of buildings and our programs have been fantastic. But I would like to think my legacy is that the doors I open for the students to find their path and the career that they're in, much like I was provided that mentorship. I'd rather have that legacy in 10 years than whatever the buildings we built, because buildings leave.
Yes, and people carry on your legacy to wherever role they take on. Wonderful. What advice would you give to older people, 50s plus, who might want to enter into your field?
So I think I think there's lots of opportunities. First of all, I think that many businesses, including the airlines, look for what I'll call more mature individuals that have worldly experience because, you know, let's be honest, they have less of maybe the drama behind them and they're looking for stability and they want to go into the workforce to contribute. And I think that employers are looking for those types of willing attitude individuals that might be older. Doesn't mean that they can't, you know, that they should be prevented from doing the work. I think in certain professional technical roles, like whether it be air traffic control or pilot, it might be a little bit challenging if you're in your, you know, your 50s to do that. But I wouldn't say it's impossible.
Wonderful, thank you. And was your business able to allow work from home, or is everything done on site?
So during COVID, our organization's 12 employees, so we're not big. We do have a lot of outside, I use a lot of outside professionals in various sectors, financial and some consulting. So some of our consultants are around the country. And so they work on projects remotely as independent contractors because they don't need, but if they need to be on site, they would travel to do so. My staff need to be at the airport. So during COVID, we didn't close our business. We were deemed essential. We were building projects in Van Nuys and in Dallas during COVID, and we were on site to do so. And we obviously had to follow more strict protocols. But in some cases, you know, folks in our team can work remotely temporarily. for a just maybe a day, a week or two. But a lot of our work, we have to be on site to see the work that we're doing, or we have to engage on site with our clients. Our facilities tend to operate 24/7, 365. So we don't really shut down.
Wonderful. Do you get to go to all the various airports? Do you have to go to all the various airports you oversee?
So I've been to a lot of airports. I do have the advantage of seeing lots of airports, mostly in the United States. As I mentioned earlier to the team, today I'm talking to you from Northern Idaho, where not only we have a second residence, but we are now, I've found ways to build relationships here, and we're actually building a hangar with a client, and project managing that, at the Coeur d'Alene Airport. And so, seeing airports is fantastic. There's a saying in our industry that if you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport, because a runway is a runway, but the culture and the community around that airport are all very unique at every airport. And it's really fun to bring in the commonality of each airport, but then see the unique differences and then how to try to make it work.
Wonderful. And a follow-up, I guess, to that question is, what's been your favorite project that you've overseen?
That's a good question. So I would say, probably most recently, it was the project in Dallas, at Love Field, where we built a $10 million building, for a very large fractional ownership company that's the tenant there now. And I would say the reason why it was, most exciting for it recently is, so the founder of our company that started it in the 70s, I didn't tell this story early on, but when I was managing the facility in Long Beach, his company, Aerolease, at the time, I wasn't working there, they built the facility in Long Beach. And when the company that I was working for there decided to leave, he asked me to stay and join Aerolease, and he became, my professional mentor, and ultimately made me a partner in the business. And he's now deceased. And I guess the reason why Dallas, I would say, is my favorite at this point, because it was the first project that we had accomplished as an entity, after all the founders had passed away, that we did out of state, where I felt like the training wheels were off, and I'm really going to grow this business now and look for opportunities beyond the Southern California market. I want to really take this thing nationally. And so that was the first opportunity. And now we have 7 other projects now queued up to do in other states.
Wow, congratulations on that. Are there volunteer opportunities in the industry? That could be a great way to see it all firsthand. Also, Tom Caruso says hi.
Hello, Tom. I think there are certainly many different opportunities, to volunteer at the airport itself, or in the business side. And so the way I would kind of pursue that would be through just a reach out, to somebody, and make a self-introduction and ask for a tour. Ask for a tour of either the airport, or the business. And I usually give that as an extra credit assignment to my students is, go call the airport and do a tour with the operations department and get an in-field tour within the airport environment to learn about it. And then, write me a 2-page paper on it, and that's your extra credit assignment. But it also provides them the opportunity to meet that person at the airport and potentially learn about what other volunteer or internships opportunities are out there.
Wonderful. Yeah, just put yourself out there. You just don't know who you might meet.
The biggest mistake, I've done a lot of interview panels, both private and public interview panels. And the biggest mistake that applicants make is when at the end of that interview, undoubtedly, the question is asked, do you have anything to ask us? And that's your opportunity to reiterate your interest and that you want the job. And I've sat on a lot of panels where people have left the panel room and walked out, and the panelists were looking at each other. Did that person really want the job? they don't leave you with the impression they talked, but they went through the motions, but they didn't really leave you the impression that they why they want that job and that they're the best candidate. And so, yeah, your words right there, put yourself out there, build relationships. And it's those relationships in conjunction with your academic pursuits that are going to make you successful. The school might not appreciate this, but an academic degree doesn't necessarily mean you're smart, but it means that for an employer, it means that you have the ability to persevere, and that you have the ability to time manage, to work and go to school, or to manage a family and go to school and manage that time. That in itself is valuable to an employer.
Great. Yeah, that's definitely great advice. How would you describe a typical day in your work life, and how do you balance a work life and family life?
The toughest question you just gave me. So I would say, prior to a couple of years ago, where I really got involved in this trade organization, which operates on East Coast time. To give an example, I got a call this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning from DC, because there it's already 9 o'clock. And so, and because our operation is 24/7, there's often times where I'm talking, early in the morning and sometimes late at night. And it's a commitment that you have to make. But at the same time, to have work-life balance, you have to find opportunity to do what brings you rest. And so whether it's time with the family or whether it's time alone, I try to spend every morning, a couple hours every morning, exercising and working out, because that gives me not only time to focus and to re-energize, but it gives me time to think when I'm not being distracted. So certainly work-life balance is probably one of the biggest challenges, I think, in not just the industry I work in, but just culturally now. But you also have to have that willingness and attitude to succeed. And I think it's the work ethic, a strong work ethic with a strong interest in finding fun in your rest, is a balance.
Yes. And we got one last comment from Nelson saying the options created by the education help, though, which, yes, they do.
No question. I mean, the difference between, a candidate with an academic degree and one with just experience, if the candidate with the academic degree has the qualified experience, that person's usually going to win out.
Definitely. So I know we're up against time. Curt, any last words, anything you want to leave with our current students and alumni watching?
No, I would just encourage them to persevere, to realize wherever they are in their academic pursuit, whether it's undergraduate or graduate, you might not know what direction you're going in, but experiment. Take the time to seek outside the college, outside the work environment, through associations that will allow you to build relationships. That's probably the best takeaway. And ask questions, find a mentor, find somebody in the field of your interest that can help bounce ideas off and help steer you.
Wonderful. And I know we had it up, the slide, before we go. Not sure if you're on LinkedIn, but I know we had your email up. If anyone wants to connect with you, I know you're welcome to.
Yep, my email's on the slide, and I am on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to chat privately with any of the folks that might want to reach out.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Curt, for your time. We really appreciate taking your time from Iowa today to be with us. Everyone else attending, thank you so much. This recording will be up in a couple of days, but feel free to follow us on social media to learn about future chats like this. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.